Hello, my Juicy co-creators. Lilu here on the Juicy Living Tour. I'm in Japan today, actually at the foot of Mount Fuji with Kazu. Hello, Kazu.
Hello, how are you doing?
Very, very well. I'm thrilled to be interviewing you right now. I know you're part of the Youth SOPP program, which is the Symphony of Peace Prayer. There was this magnificent event here happening with thousands and thousands of people praying for peace in the world. I'm super inspired by you. When I heard your name, there's some emotion that came up. The same way that yesterday some emotions came up for me when I was hearing some prayers for some countries that I have never heard of, maybe. So I don't know what it is about your story and you, but there's something that deeply touched me. And I would love to hear what you do with the nonviolence communication and your work in the prison. Please share, because I know you're originally from Japan, yes, but you live in the US.
Yeah, so I was born in Tokyo, but I grew up in the States. And right now I serve as Operations Director and Bay Area Coordinator for an organization called the Positive Peace Warrior Network. And we do nonviolence trainings called Kingian Nonviolence. It's based on Dr. King's philosophy. And, you know, in line with Dr. King's vision of the beloved community, we really work with everybody. We work with college professors and college students. We work in the prisons and we work in the jails. We work with philanthropists. We work with anarchists. We work with meditation teachers. And, you know, we really feel like in order to create that vision of the beloved community that includes justice for all people, that we really need to be working with all communities. So we do our trainings with everyone and anybody that is interested in attending.
So you work with prisoners? How does it work, really? Yeah,
we work in several prisons and county jails in the San Francisco Bay Area right now. Kingian Nonviolence as a philosophy has traveled to prisons all over the world, but as an organization we do a lot of work in the county jails in San Francisco as well as in San Quentin State Prison. And right now we do mostly 2-day workshops, which is our introductory workshops. We work with both men and women in the jails, and we're moving into a phase of our project where we're going to be training some of the men and the women to become nonviolence trainers inside of the jail so that they can do peer education to the new inmates that are coming in and out. So that's kind of our goal right now.
So I guess through that non-violence communication, it helps to heal parts of themselves that are not healed, right? How does that work through communication that we can actually heal people?
Well, our curriculum and our philosophy is actually a little bit different than nonviolent communication. Okay. Kingian nonviolence is a very specific form of nonviolence, and it's based on Dr. King's philosophy. And there's really 3 main components to it. One is analyzing conflict and really trying to understand what conflict is, how conflict works. We believe, a lot of people believe that conflict is a bad thing. We believe that conflict is completely neutral, and it's how we respond to those conflicts that gives it a good or bad outcome. So by studying and analyzing how conflict works, we have a better understanding of how we can respond to it in ways that brings about positive transformation. And then we talk about the principles of nonviolence that Dr. King described, which is really about understanding how different responses to conflict bring about those different outcomes and how nonviolent principles can help guide us figuring out how we respond to the various conflict in our lives. And then we talk about what we call the 6 steps of nonviolence, the 6 steps of Kingian nonviolence, which is about developing a long-term organizing strategy and how to take those principles of nonviolence and build powerful movements so that we can change policy and change society. Our philosophy is unique in that it really because our work is about the nature of conflict. When we work in the prisons and the high schools and the like, we really work on interpersonal conflict and conflict between people, conflict that we have in our own hearts. But because we follow the legacy of Dr. King, we also work on social conflicts and, the conflict between the 1% and the 99%, or the conflict between the rich and the poor. We believe that conflict is conflict, and whether you're looking at interpersonal conflict or larger social conflicts, it really plays by the same rules. So by understanding conflict and by understanding the principles of nonviolence, then we can really figure out the best ways to respond to that and ways that bring about something positive in our lives and in our community.
And for each and every of us that are living in this daily life, we can have partner conflict or work conflict. Is there some advice that you have for ordinary, everyday people like us getting into those conflicts that can really be hurtful, that can hurt another, that can really create some hatred?
Sure. Well, like you said, conflict is universal, right? There's no way that we can get through life or even a single day without running into some conflict. And we always talk about how, we don't really think about conflict as a neutral thing. And we always react to conflict without thinking about it. And oftentimes when we react to conflict, we react based on what society has taught us from day one. And, I live in Oakland, California, where there's, it's a pretty violent community. And so for people growing up in communities like that, all we know from day one is we just react to conflict in ways that oftentimes bring about violence. But when you recognize that conflict itself is completely neutral, and if we can learn to just suspend our first judgment and learn to respond to conflict and not just react to conflict, but consciously and proactively respond to the conflict in our lives, then we can bring about positive changes based on those conflicts, and we can learn things from conflict, and we can grow from conflict. And, you mentioned that conflict can also bring about hate. One of the things that is really important in our philosophy that Dr. King really talked about is he said that nonviolence isn't just a refusal to shoot your opponent, but it's a refusal to hate your opponent, because we believe that carrying hate and carrying anger in our hearts is actually an act of violence that we do to ourselves. Yeah. And there's an old saying that says hating someone is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Yeah. And so our philosophy isn't just about not hitting somebody and learning not to hit somebody, but it's about learning to let go of our anger and learn to let go of our hatred and learning to move forward in our lives through compassion and through love.
I would love you to speak more about compassion, because I hear there's a lot of compassion in your work.
Absolutely. I mean, our work is based on the legacy of Dr. King. And I think oftentimes Dr. King's message is really watered down because we focus just on the love and the compassion. And obviously that's what he was grounded in. His philosophy is grounded in the power of love and compassion. But it was also combined with a willingness to fight for justice. And it wasn't just about being nice. It wasn't just about praying for peace and being nice and singing Kumbaya, but it was about being in the streets and organizing and demanding justice.
Taking action.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think for him, he talked about agape love, right, which is the Greek word for unconditional love for humanity. And it's that type of love. It's a love that sometimes you have to struggle to have. Right? When we talk about loving your enemies, it's not an easy thing. It's something you have to struggle to have. And so I think when King talked about love and when King talked about compassion, it was a powerful and almost aggressive love. We use words like aggressive and assertive, and even in the name of our organization, we're called the Positive Peace Warrior Network, because we believe that love is not a weak thing. That love is a powerful thing. Dr. King said that love without power can be anemic, right? And power without love can be destructive. And so it's by combining the power of love and the willingness to fight for justice that we can really create change in our society.
Beautiful. I was wondering about your own personal story. How did you get into this? Was it related to your own story and there was violence maybe?
Yeah, definitely when I grew up as a child, there was a lot of violence in my family. And, like a lot of people, I think I internalized a lot of that and started going down a pretty destructive path myself. And it was through organizations and communities and elders that were involved in peace and justice work that really took me under their wing, that really showed me a new path in life. And specifically with Kingian Nonviolence, I was involved in a movement in Oakland, California back in 2009 when a young man named Oscar Grant was shot and killed by the transit police. And I was involved in the steering committee of the kind of community's response to it. And that movement, it was a powerful movement. We had, thousands and thousands of people out in the street. And for probably the first 6 months of 2009 since the shooting, if you walked around the streets of Oakland, that's all everyone was talking about was justice for Oscar Grant. But unfortunately, at least from my perspective, that movement, it was a movement that was driven largely by hatred and anger. And it was hatred towards the police and anger at everything that the police has been doing in the city of Oakland. And I think that anger it's righteous anger. Like, people need to be angry. People have to be angry at the conditions that we're living in. And at the same time, if that anger is the force that continues to drive our movement, anger can spark movements, but if it continues to be the essence of what continues to push the movement forward and drive the movement forward, it really destroys the movement from inside out. And being a participant of that movement, I really saw that anger and that hatred destroy the movement from inside out. So I really started looking for other ways that we can try to create social change in ways that aren't driven by hatred, that aren't going to eat ourselves up from inside out. And that's when I really came into Kingian Nonviolence, and I really became dedicated to that philosophy of trying to create change and trying to demand change, but coming from a place of love and compassion.
If you have a last word for people listening all around the world, there's beautiful co-creators, you know, that are from every single country watching this. What would you like to say, or what would be your final message or a call to action or whatever?
Well, you know, again, I think living in the States, everyone knows about Dr. King. Everyone knows who he is and has some idea of the work that he did. But his message is incredibly watered down. Even as an activist and having, you know, been working in peace and justice since I was 17 years old, I had no idea what Dr. King stood for until 2009 when I came into Kingian Nonviolence. And so I'd really encourage people to study Dr. King's work, because I really think, you know, the work that he did 50 years ago is so alive today. It's so needed today. So you know, we really do a disservice when we think of Dr. King as someone who just had a dream one night, you know. So I really encourage people to study Dr. King's work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My beautiful co-creators, this is juicy. I said you much, much love. Thank you. Thank you so much for these words of wisdom. Big kisses from Japan. Bye.
Hello, how are you doing?
Very, very well. I'm thrilled to be interviewing you right now. I know you're part of the Youth SOPP program, which is the Symphony of Peace Prayer. There was this magnificent event here happening with thousands and thousands of people praying for peace in the world. I'm super inspired by you. When I heard your name, there's some emotion that came up. The same way that yesterday some emotions came up for me when I was hearing some prayers for some countries that I have never heard of. Hello, my juicy co-creators. Lilu here on the Juicy Living Tour. I'm in Japan today, actually at the foot of Mount Fuji with Kazu. Hello, Kazu.
King's philosophy. And, you know, in line with Dr. King's vision of the beloved community, we really work with everybody. We work with college professors and college students. We work in the prisons and we work in the jails. We work with philanthropists. We work with anarchists. We work with meditation teachers. And, you know, we really feel like in order to create that vision of the beloved community that includes justice for all people, that we really need to be working with all communities. So we do our trainings with everyone and
maybe. So I don't know what it is about your story and you, but there's something that deeply touched me, and I would love to hear what you do with the nonviolence communication and your work in the prison. Please share, because I know you're originally from Japan, yes, but you live in the U.S.
Yeah, so I was born in Tokyo, but I grew up in the States. And right now I serve as Operations Director and Bay Area Coordinator for an organization called the Positive Peace Warrior Network. And we do nonviolence trainings called Kingian Nonviolence. It's based on Dr. Anybody that is interested in attending.
So you work with prisoners? How does it work, really? Yeah,
we work in several prisons and county jails in the San Francisco Bay Area right now. Kingian Nonviolence as a philosophy has traveled to prisons all over the world, but as an organization we do a lot of work in the county jails in San Francisco as well as in San Quentin State Prison. And right now we do mostly 2-day workshops, which is our introductory workshops. We work with both men and women in the jail.